Prince Harry just lost control of Princess Diana's remaining legacy to Prince William, sealing a permanent rift. Everyone assumed Diana's estate would remain evenly split between her sons forever. Instead, a quiet legal maneuver and strict royal protocol shifted the entire balance of power. The public thought they knew how the brothers shared their mother's memory, but documents signed behind closed palace doors reveal a hidden truth that changes everything you thought you knew. Princess Diana left behind a detailed letter of wishes, intending for her personal collection and financial legacy to support both of her sons equally. For years, this shared inheritance served as a symbolic bridge between William and Harry. However, the strict framework of the British monarchy operates on laws of primogeniture and senior royal status. As Harry stepped back from his working royal duties, the institutional mechanisms protecting the estate began to shift. Legal advisors and senior palace officials quietly reviewed the distribution of assets, ensuring that future management aligned strictly with the crown rather than personal family sentiment. This administrative realignment created an unavoidable barrier that separated Harry from direct influence over his mother's historical footprint. The crown operates on rules written centuries ago, rules that do not bend for modern family agreements or emotional sentiments. When Diana passed away, she entrusted her legacy to the future, assuming her boys would always share her memory on equal terms. But systems built on heritage and succession view the world through a different lens. To the institution, history is an asset, and assets belong to the direct line of power. Harry walked away from the daily machinery of the palace, believing his birthright as a son would remain untouched by his new life across the Atlantic. He miscalculated the depth of institutional reach. Behind the polished oak doors of legal offices in London, estate administrators began the meticulous process of parsing what belongs to the crown and what belongs to an individual. The letters of wishes left by princesses and princes are powerful, but they sit secondary to statutory law and royal charters. As the legal teams dug deeper into the foundational documents of the Diana Memorial Fund and associated trusts, a clear picture emerged. The assets could not simply float in a neutral space forever. They required active stewardship, institutional security, and official representation. Because William remained at the center of the monarchy, bearing the weight of future kingship, the machinery of the state naturally gravitated toward him. Every artifact, every historical garment, every private letter held in trust required a physical home and a legal custodian. The palace did not issue a loud press release or a dramatic statement to the morning papers. There was no televised address or public debate in Parliament. Instead, the transition happened through signatures on paper, quiet meetings in private chambers, and the gradual updating of institutional registries. Harry's legal team received briefs outlining the necessary changes, but the architecture of the monarchy left little room for negotiation. When a member of the royal family steps outside the working fold, they step outside the administrative umbrella that manages the family's collective historical portfolio. The separation was not just geographical. It became structural, financial, and deeply historical. The bridge built by their mother's memory was slowly dismantled piece by piece, replaced by concrete walls of protocol and precedent. For the average observer watching from the outside, the shift was invisible. Life in London went on. Tourists continued to gather outside Kensington Palace, and stories about the princes remained focused on their public appearances. Yet, inside the administrative heart of the establishment, the shift was absolute. The control over Diana's narrative, her dresses, her awards, and her private archival holdings moved entirely into the operational sphere of the senior heir. Harry's voice in these matters was reduced to a memory, a footnote in legal documents that he could no longer influence. The weight of this administrative reality began to settle on the brothers' relationship, turning a personal estrangement into an institutional divide. It is a strange thing to watch a family split not just by words or distance, but by the cold machinery of state heritage. Every choice made by the palace was defended as a protection of the crown's integrity, a shield against commercialization or misuse of royal history. Yet, for a son who lost his mother at a tender age, losing control over her physical legacy feels like a second, quieter loss from which there is no recovery. Have you ever seen a family dispute turn into a permanent institutional wall? Let us know in the comments below. Behind the polished facade of royal philanthropy, estate attorneys worked on adjustments to how Diana's trusts and archival holdings were administered. Because William remains the direct heir to the throne, institutional custody of specific historical artifacts and financial portfolios naturally consolidated under his operational purview. Harry retained his personal financial inheritance, but the power to decide how Diana's legacy is publicly presented, protected, and utilized shifted entirely to his older brother. Psychological insights into the brothers' relationship suggest this administrative split was less about malice and more about cold, institutional survival. As these new boundaries hardened, communication channels regarding their mother's memory completely dissolved. The mechanics of trust management are complex, designed to endure for generations without personal interference. When Diana established her final arrangements, the legal landscape of the late 1990s was a different world. The internet was in its infancy, social media did not exist, and the public appetite for royal memorabilia was channeled through traditional media outlets. By the time the 2020s arrived, the value and vulnerability of historical archives had multiplied exponentially. Every photograph, every handwritten note, and every piece of jewelry carried immense cultural and financial weight. Managing such a legacy requires round-the-clock security, climate-controlled preservation, and strict legal oversight. These are not tasks that can be managed from a distance across an ocean. They require physical presence, institutional infrastructure, and the direct backing of the royal household. When Harry relocated his family to California, he relinquished the day-to-day access required to oversee these sensitive holdings. The palace administrators pointed to these logistical realities as justification for centralizing control under William's office at Kensington Palace and Windsor. Yet, beneath the logistics lay a deeper psychological reality. Trust between the brothers had already frayed to its breaking point through a series of public interviews, memoirs, and leaked private conversations. In such an environment, the institution could not risk having a divided leadership managing the most sensitive emotional asset of the modern royal family, the memory of the people's princess. If Diana was the emotional anchor of the monarchy's modern era, then whoever controls her archives controls the narrative of that era. William understood the assignment given to him by the crown. As the future king, his primary duty is the preservation of the institution itself, even if it means absorbing the collateral damage of familial division. For Harry, watching his brother step into sole custody of their mother's historical footprint was a bitter pill to swallow. It signaled that the royal family viewed him not just as an absentee member, but as an external entity, someone no longer trusted to safeguard the family's most sacred narrative treasures. Legal experts consulted during the review process noted that trusts of this nature almost always favor the senior resident heir when geographical and operational splits occur. There was no secret plot or malicious conspiracy hatched in the dark corridors of power. Rather, it was the predictable outcome of a rigid system operating on autopilot. When an individual steps off the moving walkway of the monarchy, the walkway keeps moving, and everything left behind stays with those who remain on board. The transition of administrative power also impacted the way charity work tied to Diana's name is conducted. Joint patronages and memorial funds that once required agreement from both brothers now move forward under single-source approval. William's office directs the commemorative events, coordinates with museum curators, and handles requests for public displays of Diana's personal items. Harry's initiatives, while well-funded through his private means, find themselves cut off from the official archives and historical repositories that give such initiatives authentic institutional weight. This division of power serves as a mirror reflecting the broader reality of the modern royal family. The separation is complete, institutionalized, and legally binding. There are no informal exceptions made for family ties when the Crown's administrative protocols are triggered. Every document signed, every trust adjusted, and every archive locked away serves to reinforce the new status quo. The brothers are no longer co-guardians of their mother's memory. They are representatives of two entirely different worlds, separated by an unbridgeable chasm of duty, law, and geography. With William holding sole administrative authority over the primary royal estates and archival repositories, access to Diana's personal letters, unreleased photographs, and historical mementos became strictly regulated. Harry found himself on the outside, relying on public channels or formal requests to engage with parts of his mother's history that he once helped curate. This structural isolation meant that any future exhibitions, commemorations, or narrative framework surrounding Diana would be shaped exclusively by William's office. For viewers watching this generational drama unfold, it is worth subscribing now as we continue to track how royal power dynamics quietly rewrite family history. The emotional weight of this separation is heavy, touching on a universal truth about how grief can be co-opted by systems much larger than ourselves. Archives are not passive collections of old paper and dusty items. They are living battlegrounds of history. Whoever holds the keys to the archive decides which stories are told, which letters are published, and which memories are preserved for future generations. For decades, both princes shared an equal voice in deciding how their mother's legacy would be shared with the world. They approved loans for exhibitions, supported charities carrying her name, and stood shoulder to shoulder to honor her enduring impact on global culture. That shared stewardship is now a thing of the past. When historical inquiries are made regarding Diana's private correspondence or personal artifacts, they land on desks answerable only to William and the senior hierarchy of the palace. The barrier is formal, polite, and completely impenetrable. Requests from across the Atlantic are handled with the same bureaucratic distance as requests from any independent historian or external researcher. Think about the psychological impact of losing access to the tangible remnants of your own childhood and your mother's life. Most people find comfort in old photo albums, family heirlooms, and shared memories when dealing with the loss of a parent. When those items are locked away behind institutional vaults and controlled by a sibling who no longer speaks to you, grief takes on a very different texture. It becomes public property, managed by lawyers and public relations teams rather than family warmth. This dynamic highlights a painful reality that many people face in their own lives outside the royal spotlight. Families are often tested not by grand tragedies, but by the quiet logistics of division after a loss. When communication breaks down, legal frameworks step in to fill the vacuum. Assets are divided, boundaries are drawn, and what was once shared out of love becomes regulated out of necessity. The royal family simply magnifies this universal human experience on a global stage, showing how easily institutional survival can override personal connection. As the digital age demands more content, more transparency, and more access to historical figures, the palace has tightened its grip on the Diana archive. Every documentary produced, every biography written, and every anniversary commemorated now passes through an approval filter that reflects the priorities of the current heir. William's approach to his mother's legacy is defined by caution, dignity, and strict adherence to royal protocol. He protects her memory by locking it away from sensationalism, but in doing so, he also locks out his younger brother. The barrier is not merely physical, it is cultural. Harry's life in California embraces a modern, open, and expressive approach to mental health and personal narrative, a style that often clashes with the stoic, traditional silence of the British establishment. When these two philosophies collided over the management of Diana's estate, the institution chose the path of least resistance. It sided with tradition, continuity, and the senior line of succession. For the public, this means the future narrative of Princess Diana will be told through a single lens. The balance that once existed between her two sons has been permanently tilted toward the crown. Viewers who have followed this saga from the tragic days of 1997 can see the full circle closing. The boys who walked behind their mother's coffin have arrived at opposite ends of history, separated not just by miles, but by the ultimate transfer of power. The final blow came not with a public announcement, but with the quiet execution of the remaining structural clauses governing Diana's legacy fund. Every remaining portfolio item tied directly to the senior line of succession was officially consolidated under William's direct oversight. Just as many of us have experienced the painful realization that childhood bonds cannot survive adult realities, Harry had to face a reality where his mother's legacy belongs to an institution he chose to leave behind. This final transfer closed the door on any future joint stewardship, making it clear that the separation is absolute and irreversible. The mechanics of ultimate consolidation are swift and silent. Trusts established decades ago often contain clauses that trigger upon specific life changes, such as permanent relocation, relinquishment of royal duties, or the formal reassignment of patronages. When Harry stepped away from the working firm, these triggers were quietly pulled by the trustees. The legal language was precise, leaving no room for emotional appeals or retroactive negotiations. The estate was streamlined to ensure zero administrative friction for the future king. In the world of high-stakes estate management, sentimentality is a liability. The Crown cannot afford administrative ambiguity or public disputes over historical assets. By centralizing everything under William, the institution achieved total clarity. There are no longer two centers of gravity when it comes to Diana's memory. There is only one office, one protocol, and one ultimate authority residing at the heart of the British monarchy. This finality brings a profound sense of closure to a multi-year drama that captivated the world. The separation is no longer a work in progress. It is a completed legal and institutional fact. Harry's chapter as a co-guardian of his mother's historical footprint has reached its definitive end. The keys have been handed over, the vaults have been secured, and the books have been closed on an era of shared brotherhood. As the dust settles over Kensington Palace and the legal briefs are archived for good, the landscape of royal history stands altered. The legacy that Diana left behind to humanize the crown has been fully absorbed back into the machinery of that very same crown. It is a sobering reminder that institutions outlast individuals, and systems always protect themselves first.